Welcome back everyone. Today we'll be discussing the Yeezy 500 Blush. Specifically, we'll be discussing whether you should sell or hold the Yeezy 500 Blush and why that is. And this one will definitely be quite interesting considering they already dropped in 2018, so you'll see some similar points I made as to what we discussed in the recent blue tint video. You'll see. To preface this, if you guys enjoy these types of videos regarding the market, reselling, and even info on how to acquire these limited products, be sure to subscribe and enable post notifications. This way you're always 100% updated. Furthermore, for more urgent updates such as the recent Jordan 1 patent bred shock drop, follow my Twitter KeithAdam10 and also Personals for You. And of course, for early information before those drops actually occur, follow Endurance's Twitter for updates on the next restock. For those who don't know, the Yeezy 500 Blush re-releases on February 19th, tomorrow. Retail will be $210, which is $10 higher than their old retail. Since this is an Adidas product and not Nike, I cannot confirm the exact stock myself though. In order to determine if the Yeezy 500 Blush will be a fruitful hold, we will cover an estimated range of what the sneaker will settle at after the drop, and also when shipments come in, essentially the pairs going into circulation, whether they're expected to increase post-drop or even hypothetically decrease, along with how much specifically over specific periods of time, and finally, what type of margin are we looking at for these in terms of holding. Not the retail to resell initial margin, but rather just the hold margin over X period of time. Basically, are these going to be worth your time or not, even if they do go up? Kicking it off, let's discuss the estimated range these should be settling at. To begin with, stock for these appears to be quite high, like most 500s and 350s are, although not quite as high as the Beluga Reflectives or even the blue tints that we recently saw. But again, I can't confirm that since this is an Adidas product and not Nike. For those who've been in the game for a little while, you'll know that these 500 Blushes actually already released in February 2018. Now back then, these certainly had immense demand, especially in the months following the drop, being the very first Yeezy 500. After their main worldwide release, they still remained in very high demand and only increased over time. While many 500s are not too hyped these days, this colorway in particular still carries very good demand. This is reflected in the good sale volume we're seeing pre-drop at these relatively high prices, in addition to a healthy amount of bids, contrary to many other 500s that we've seen recently. However, while this sale volume and these bids are good, it definitely does not compare to what we saw on the recent blue tint Yeezy 350, for example. Those certainly had much more demand than these. Retail is just slightly higher than usual on these at $210, $10 higher than typical retail for 500 lows, so this of course will negatively impact your margin, but by a very small amount of course. Hence, despite the slightly inflated retail, I am still confident that these should still remain profitable with a decent to good margin. Nothing crazy by any means, but an easy money opportunity nonetheless. Now, regarding a specific range, prices have already seen the vast majority of their pre-drop decrease, following the JD Sports early access pairs, pre-sellers, general early pairs, and even the 2018 early pairs that are already in circulation. This leaves the current average at about $300 for sizes 4 to 12, but of course, this is only the pre-drop average. Remember, we tend to not include sizes like 12.5 and 13.5 sometimes if they are severe outliers, as this will definitely throw off the standard mean. Now, we normally see a notable change post-US drop. This is when we normally experience what I like to refer to as the Impulsivity Effect. You guys should know what I'm referring to by now. We discuss it very frequently, yet it almost still always occurs to some degree. Regarding the Impulsivity Effect, if you haven't watched my seller hold videos before, sneaker drops specifically impact human impulsiveness significantly after an individual fails to acquire that desired product due to insufficient supply and too much demand. Therefore, on average, we normally see about a 10% increase of the pre-drop prices post-drop, although throughout late 2021 and 2022, it seems a 5% increase has been much more common. That 5 to 10% increase isn't always the case though, such as when a sneaker is slightly overvalued. For example, of course, the Beluga 350 release was a perfect example of the contrary, where they actually decreased by 5% post-drop for the reasons I mentioned in my seller hold video, and that's precisely what we did end up seeing. When it comes to these 500 Blush, although these used to be extremely hyped, and contrary to my initial expectations a few weeks ago, the sale volume is good, but it's nothing crazy like we saw on the blue tint 350s, for example, those of which we did did indeed see a 5% increase post-drop, as we did expect. So hypothetically, if stock on these 500 blushes were to be the same as the blue tints, that would mean we'd likely see a decrease by 5% post-drop. While I don't have the exact stock since this is an Adidas product, based off of prior 500 drops, I would assume that that will not be the case, and these will most likely be more limited compared to the 350s, of course. So the question now then is, will these be limited enough to offset the slightly lower demand and still provoke a 5% increase? At the moment, I'd have to say no, at least not by 5%. With an average price at $300, I'd say that this is rather justified, unless they end up being extremely limited, of course. Initially, I thought that the fact that there are a lot of 2018 pairs in circulation might be a good fact for these being undervalued and thus lead to a positive impulsivity effect after the drop when people realize, but that turned out not to be the case for the Jordan 1 Marina Blue, where I expected it to be because of the Europe pairs that were already in circulation. In fact, those Jordan 1 Marina Blues just stayed the same post-drop and we didn't see an increase, contrary to what I actually expected, which I think is important to address, of course. So we learned from that and say perhaps that the fact that there are many pairs in 2018 pairs in circulation might not be a big factor after all, for the impulsivity effect at least. Therefore, for these, I'm not expecting a positive impulsivity effect, but I'm also not expecting there to be a negative one, essentially allowing the prices to remain somewhat the same post-drop, around $300 for sizes 4 to 12. Yeah, I know, some really complex math this time, I know. I do hope I'm wrong though, because then the average may be $315, making the profit all the better. But unfortunately, that's not what I'm expecting at the moment, because that would mean a lot of the sizes would then have to be in the mid to upper 300s, and for sizes 4 to 12, I'm not sure I'm expecting that. Now, let's discuss what prices will look like once the shipments go out in the 1 to 2 week range. So during this period, the vast majority of pairs will be going into circulation. Again, although I don't have the exact stock, I'm assuming this will be lower stock than what we've seen on 350s, so I definitely wouldn't expect an abnormal rate of decrease. Most likely, we just see the usual 10% decrease rather than a full 15% decrease like we've seen on many 350s recently. In addition, this is where it might actually be an important factor that some pairs are already in circulation from the 2018 pairs, even if that doesn't matter for the impulsivity effect. Hence, with a 10% decrease, we may see the average of 4 to 12 dip to around $270 after all shipments go out within 1 to 2 weeks. But now that the average price ranges those points in time are evident, let's discuss whether they're expected to increase from the post-shipment prices or even hypothetically continue to decrease. When it comes to these, we actually have a direct comparison, which is fantastic considering they literally already released in 2018 and we have all the data for that. Although there is additional stock in circulation right now, it should still react in a proportional manner nonetheless. So initially, with these after the 2018 release, what did we end up seeing? Well, unlike what we saw on the blue tints, these actually started to increase rather quickly and by a notable amount too. Within less than 1 year, average prices soared from around $270, ironically, what we're expecting prices to be post-shipments for these, all the way up to $370, allowing for nearly a 40% ROI in less than a year's time. This is certainly very impressive. Now, in terms of the long-term hold potential, that was also pretty solid too. While they did plateau for about a year, after that, they actually continued to increase, peaking at just over $500 before rumors started circulating of a re-release for these. And that is definitely very impressive for long term. So despite there now being additional stock in circulation, of course, I am still expecting a somewhat proportional reaction, although not as high, still proportional, so essentially an increase after that post-shipment trough within just a few months' time. Finally, regarding the hold margin on these, essentially, are these actually going to be worth your time even if they do go up? Well, considering I'm expecting these to react proportionally to what they did in 2018, being the first 500 low, I definitely do think that we have not only good short-term potential for 1 year, but also good long-term potential as well. That is, until Adidas decides to re-release these again. So even though we might not get nearly a 40% ROI within a year like we did in 2018 to 2019, I do believe we should still get a pretty solid ROI short-term, and maybe even somewhat close to that. So with that considered, in addition to good long-term potential as well, I have decided to rate these a 7 out of 10 hold rating, which is really good. definitely above average. Of course, the unpredictable issue is that these will most likely be re-released in several years from now, so once you do see a good return on these, you'll probably want to sell these and get them off your hands. I'll personally be holding the majority of my pairs for around 2 years or so. I feel pretty good about at least a decent ROI on these, but of course, that's just my opinion. I'm just sharing it, and this all might just be completely wrong. I'm definitely no wizard. This is just a conversation. Also, just a note in general, for anyone considering holding any items who do have low capital, you should never hold any items if you don't have sufficient capital to go for as many drops as possible at your full potential without holding back. If you do need money to go for all drops, try to sell these as soon as possible while prices are still high. Let me know what you guys are doing with your pairs down in the comments below. Since this is a discussion at the end of the day, I can't predict the future. This is just my personal analysis based on the data that I've acknowledged. We have a lot of brilliant minds watching the video right now, so I implore you to leave your notions down in the comments below. Anyway, that'll conclude it for today. Feel free to leave a like if you enjoyed, or perhaps if you learned a thing or two. Subscribe and enable post notifications. This way you stay 100% updated on all hyped releases. Also, feel free to check out the links in the description below for reliable, fast, residential proxies and pre-verified Nike sneakers or Adidas accounts. Also, feel free to follow Endurance's Twitter for updates on restocks or key giveaways, and the same goes for Gargantua if you want to keep up with the progress or restocks. Last but not least, make sure to follow Keith Adam 10 and also Personals for You. This way you guys stay updated on all urgent info like I was discussing today. With that said, I'll see you guys later. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and of course, good luck on the drop, or if you already copped, congratulations.